everyone. Welcome to the And Now for Something Completely Machinima podcast. This is our third podcast in January in which we'll be talking about a film pick. I'm Ricky Grove, your narrator, and this is Phil Rice's pick. Hello, Phil.
Hey there.
Tracy Harwood and Damian Valentine are here to talk with us as well.
Hello.
Phil has a very interesting pick, one that takes you down the rabbit hole, so to speak. One that I was not aware of and which was highly entertaining. Tell us about it, Phil.
Yeah, I found this kind of by accident. I wasn't even on one of my normal hunts or searches for machinima stuff, but somehow scrolling my YouTube, the page that's assembled for you with the algorithm, there was some Half-Life 2 related thing there. And so I watched it. And then over in the column of, related videos was this thing, it's titled Interloper, Half-Life 2's Greatest Unsolved Mystery. And I thought, well, clickbait or not, I'm intrigued. What is it? I've played that game. I know that game. Never heard of this. What is this? Whoa, boy. So this film, and it's made by a guy named Anamide. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is what I'm going to call like a low budget machinima documentary of sorts. In that there's no, it's all on-screen text, almost no voiceover between this and its sequel, which was just released this past November as like a follow-up, same style. Essentially, this film, told as a documentary, shows this player discovering a strange visual artifact, kind of like almost graffiti, on the wall in this obscure alleyway in one of the levels of Half-Life 2. Discovers it presumably just by accident, and starts digging into it as because there's apparently rumors around about what this it's a figure of a humanoid figure of some kind. And so he starts peeling the onion on this, including digging into the actual files of the game to look at the texture that's responsible for this image appearing there. And the texture is, the image file is corrupted. What is it called when data is embedded into an image? There's a specific name for that.
Metadata.
Metadata. Well, no, this is when the data is actually, metadata would be, it like kind of hitches along for the ride with a file. There's spectrometry or something along those lines. Basically, in place of the pixels in the data of the image itself is embedded data, and a lot of times it's imperceptible. Well, he noticed some evidence of some kind of corruption along those lines, and so he goes looking through, opens it up in a hex editor to look at the actual data in the corrupted part of the image, and there's a reference to some kind of a server and some commands, and Half-Life has a command console that you can run a command prompt. And so he types it in and connects to this server, and it starts delivering up in-game demos, which are recordings made within the game. And each time he visits it, it delivers another at random. It will download it and then play it. And yada, yada, yada. This whole mystery starts to unravel as this very weird content starts to make itself known. And I'm watching this, just my jaw is in my lap. And I'm just like, what? Because it's this weird thing. It's like, who would ever even discover this? And who would take the time to put this in, knowing that it's a one in a million shot that anyone would look at this? What's happening? And so I start questioning, am I being hoaxed here? Is this fake? And this is just being put on? But I tell you, it was really incredibly well made and incredibly convincing. Like everything technically wise that he was showing was plausible. Improbable, but plausible. Like it's okay. I guess I can see how that might work like that. Just this very strange thing, and almost a conspiracy theory wrapped within the world, not just of Half-Life 2, but of all the Source games, if this story is to be believed.
Yes, because
and
he tried the
only
command
a
on other
certain-
Source games.
Right. And it's only at a certain time period that this window into this command and getting all this demo data is even open. And some of the demos are incredibly creepy. Like just more than a couple jump scares even. And at the end of it, I don't know. I don't tend to do Tracy's level of research. I just watch stuff and I might read the description. So I have no idea if I've been had here or what, but it is incredibly intriguing. And even if it's a made up thing, brilliantly crafted hoax. Like, and even if it's just intended to be spotted as a hoax and it's just for entertainment, it's still brilliant because it's just so well done, and it's just low tech enough of a delivery to make it seem like that it's somebody who doesn't normally make videos threw together this video to show you this weird, I'm a technical geek kind of guy doing it. It's almost like a persona. Now, Tracy mentioned this episode that this guy has been involved in some Source filmmaker stuff. So it could be that I'm the very willing and eager victim of some kind of hoax.
Well, he did a second one.
Even thinking that, I'm delighted.
Yes.
So tell me.
The Interloper 2, which is the second follow-up to this, is where I realized there was a hoax.
Because what gave it away?
I don't know exactly what it was, but he you could see him straining to come up with more material, more mystery on top of mystery, which led me to feel that he had created this whole thing, that he perhaps had discovered something interesting in the image file. And yet he thought, well, if I expand this, just like a clever person who makes a conspiracy out of nothing, they expand it, and then his imagination and his technical knowledge allowed him to make it plausible. Because I was completely drawn in when I watched the first one. It was only until the second one that I realized that, well, I think it's a hoax,
Well, the thing is, too, is like the normal reaction that I would have to have been taken in by a hoax like that would be anger or embarrassment.
Not this time, no.
But with this, like, even as that suspicion started to rise, and then now you guys seem to be confirming it with your knowing smiles, I am not feeling angry or embarrassed. It's like I'm admiring,
delighted,
the performance art here. Yeah. That it was just right. Like it was just sloppy enough to think nobody made this. And it was technically accurate enough to be, I guess that could be possible. And of course, if I had the Source engine fired up, I could have probably tried to fire up some of those things and just test them right away. It was wrong. Although I think he fixed that by making it clear that, well, this only happens at a certain time. For a very limited window was this even possible. So it's like, oh, so I can't even fire it up. I mean, just brilliant. This guy's a genius. So tell me now, lift the curtain, show me the wizard. What's really going on here?
I think that one of the things that he does that is absolutely brilliant, as you say, is that he combines Let's Play with a conspiracy documentary, in such a way that you feel like you are part of a discovery of something that is so strange and creepy that you begin to try to work it out in your mind. Who did Valve put this in there? And if they did, what were they trying to say? How were they? What's nefarious about it? What's you know what I mean? It gives you that great pleasure of being part of a secret. And he had such a straight face. He delivers it with such a, well, you'd never see his face, but he does it with such clarity, such sincerity in the way he
Conviction.
talks.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I discovered this. And then when he actually shows the results of these demos, and he breaks it into 5 different types of weirdo demos, which I thought was another stroke of genius. And this is category 5,
Right.
So he shows a couple of these creepy things, and you're absolutely right. They're genuinely the creepiest goddamn things you've ever seen, especially if you have the mindset of the conspiracy.
And he
You know what I
waited
mean?
enough into the film too to reveal the really creepy one.
Yes.
Around the windows of that house.
Yeah.
And I'm 15 minutes into this thing, and it's like, okay, something is effing going on here. And then boom, yeah, I'm delighted. It was the best thing that I've ever experienced. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, one of the most creative machinima I've ever seen in a documentary style. Go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of drew me in as well, because I thought this is unlikely, but it's just plausible that this is some leftover test stuff that Valve put in the game when they were testing elements of the engine out, but they didn't take it out, because that happens with pretty much every video game. If you dig into it, you'll find that the development code and some of the test levels. And I thought,
or hidden areas, or Hall of Mirrors areas you can go into and see outside the levels. Like, if you know anything about that stuff, that totally adds to the plausibility here.
And some developers deliberately leave it in just to see if anyone does find it. Yeah. And I thought maybe that's what Valve had done.
Other game developers have done that.
Yeah.
With Easter eggs and such. Yeah.
So I didn't know, and I thought, shall I Google it and try and find out, or shall I just enjoy the mystery? And I did do a quick Google search, but it just kept linking me back to this film. So I wasn't really sure if it was a real thing or not. But I thought the way that it was done was presented really well, and in a way that it makes you want to know, and you kind of do believe it. But like you said, Phil, when you realize it's not actually real, you're not angry about it. You just enjoy the experience. It's like it's like a good prank. Like it's entertaining, even though it's not actually a real thing.
Yeah, it was a practical joke, but I didn't leave it feeling like it was at my expense.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't make you look stupid.
No. Yeah.
Well,
Tracy,
okay.
What do you think?
What a fabulous couple of films. I have to say, this guy's craft is amazing. And you guys have just summarized pretty much everything I was going to say, but I'll go through my points, because I did do a little bit of background on this as well. I
think we all knew that you would.
Because I like doing the background to them. I really enjoy that. So, obviously what you got here is lots of throwback to 90s and early 2000s on the gaming forums. And that kind of, although I don't think the typeface is the same actually, but that interface sort of style is bang on what you would have kind of got in that era, if you like, with quite a lot of really good references to things like dem files and fraps and whatnot, because all of those were sort of things that you associated with early game stuff, weren't they?
Right.
But I have to say, I think this is perhaps one of the most interesting game-based machinima stories I've seen ever. And that's because it's so embedded within the communities of gamers and gameplay and kind of gamer geek life, as well as the games themselves. And it's not just one game, but a few games, because they're all connected through the underpinning engine on which they've been made, which is Source. So it is kind of nostalgic, but it's also very explainable, and it stands up as a film on its own, I think. And I really, really enjoyed the conspiracy theory approach, and because it, in places it actually made me jump, which was bizarre, because what the hell, it was just text, right? It was just text and a few things that you couldn't actually make out really on the screen. But the longer that sort of story went on, the less I realized I actually understood what was going on. And it was just super creepy. The fact that he even shares a couple of files of from his Google Drive on the second video that he's released. And these, I didn't actually click the file, but it's definitely a Google link that he's sharing. And he says these are a couple of interesting dem files, which which he's trying to sort of say, well, you can have a look at this stuff, but be careful because these files are unstable. And then he sort of says, let me know if you figure anything out when you're watching them. And you think, oh, I'm not sure I want to click on that, because what am I going to invoke on my machine if he's able to do that on his machine? So you've kind of got this sort of ghosty thing going on, which is super weird.
Well, wasn't it like at one point he said, after I tried to play this dem file, this game stopped launching properly or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But you know what? I thought what was really clever here was that he made reference to the community members. So he was not only showing you what his take on this was, but he was also sort of saying, and folks have contributed to this. So it's kind of like really interesting the way that he's drawn people in, whether or not he actually has. I think it was really compelling that idea was embedded within it. So it's kind of interesting for a number of reasons. And then when I looked at all the comments, there were lots from folks saying how much they actually loved it, in terms of how much it would have meant to them in the early days, in terms of how people made connections between things way back when. It also kind of implying that they don't so much now, but actually I think that kind of conspiracy thing is a bigger thing now than it was back then, I think. So that's another thing that sort of seemed to come out of the forum, this sort of conspiracy idea. And then that point about the 5 what would you call
types
them?
of demo,
Yeah, that he sort of referred to in this kind of alternate reality that he's created. I thought that was really intriguing.
Me
and
too.
I wasn't sure that I actually understood what he was referring to. But I think that really added to the mystery of it, because I kind of thought, well, is that a thing? Are these real sort of categories? And that was going through my head in the first one, but in the second one he tries to explain what those categories were. There's that sort of classification system actually is, and I thought, well, if that's a real thing, I'm going to look that up. Needless to say, I couldn't find anything about that sort of 5 level of classification.
Of course, because he created it.
Well, I didn't. I was
Himself.
still kind of drawn in and convinced, and it kind of. But I tell you what was going through my mind, because I was looking at it and I was thinking, the way this guy is doing all that command line stuff, I wonder if he's actually been on the creative team and he's actually a guy that is used to coding and can do all this sort of stuff himself, the actual writing of the code and whatnot. And I wonder if that's the case, whether these classification, this sort of system comes from the fact that maybe these game developers have descriptions for different types of files that are created when they're testing games out. And so I kind of concluded that maybe it was a thing that he was just sort of drawing on. And then I found something else about these sort of 5 levels, which I also found was quite interesting. Now this is kind of purely hypothetical. Have you heard of something called the Kardashev scale?
No,
don't think so. No?
have.
Okay, right. Well, okay. So the Kardashev scale was developed by astronomer Nikolai Kardashev in the 1960s, and it measures civilization by its ability to harness energy for maintaining itself, primarily through technological advancement. And Kardashev's theory had been used for some time in proposing different types of super civilizations beyond Earth, notably in the context of those civilizations attempting to transmit information to Earth. And it's actually kind of fairly common trope in games, this thing's trying to make connection with Earth kind of thing. It's kind of fairly common. So I kind of concluded that might be where this plot is going. The fact that, maybe he's seen something, something in this sort of vein, and he's kind of drawing on that. But of course, I've absolutely no idea. So I just thought I'd add into the, into the sort of, ideas that seem to be going on there. But, obviously it's really, he's got tons of followers of hooked on this storyline, which is really authentic, I think, in what it's doing. But not only that, on his Twitter feed, he's also got a bunch of graffiti postings of the Interloper, which people have created and sort of posted to him. And what I think I particularly liked about his description of what he's doing and why it's a story, in my view, is that somewhere I saw that he's described it as a highly experimental series, which he's using to figure out a story outcome, which is some sort of grand tale that he wants to tell. And basically the process of putting these videos up is him figuring out what the story is. And that, if that is the case, what I think this is something that's a really interesting example of somebody using machinima as a creative journey, as well as trying to sort of figure out what a story is. And frankly, I'm looking forward to see what he does next to try and bring all these different threads that he's got together. Because to me, this kept me absolutely riveted to the screen for well over half an hour, which was bizarre considering what the content is.
Right.
So
right, exactly
absolutely fantastic pick, Phil. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the best machinima films I've ever seen. Really, really extraordinary. Now, to tell you this, I can't give you the actual specifics of why I think it's a hoax, but I think in reflecting, I think there are two things that lead me to that. One is there are literally hundreds of thousands of players who have access to free tools that can let you find an image file that's used in the game and look at its code, its hex, using a hex editor, find out what the actual code is. How is it that he's the only person who's ever looked at this and discovered that? Because graphics files, especially graffiti, are fair game for anybody. And in that area of Half-Life, that's a very horror specific area. I can't remember the name of it, but everybody would be looking at that file. So why is
I see what you mean, that it's plausible that he would be maybe the first, but not the only.
Right.
To have looked at it. Yeah, it would be all over Reddit and
exactly. Everybody was saying, "Hey, look at this, look at this."
No, good point.
And then the second one was in the sequel to it. You could see him straining a bit to come up with new connections. You could see him mulling it over, and that made me think, because he didn't have the same confidence that he had in the first one. And that made me think, he's showing his hand. He's showing his hand. So I think the combination of those two things made me think that it's a hoax, a genius hoax, but nevertheless a hoax.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even not a hoax whose primary purpose is to fool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm torn between, okay, it's not a hoax in the sense of like, Bernie Madoff or something. He's not out to do something as a hoax, but it's a performance.
Yes, a creative
performance. It's essentially, I mean, who was it that said that all fiction writers are essentially just good liars? I mean, in essence, that's true. You're telling something that didn't happen, but you're trying to do so convincingly and plausibly. And it's just that his medium of choice here isn't words on the written page. It's this. And so it's one of those things where, it doesn't make me stand back and go, want to point at it and go, you liar. It's the one that makes me want to stand back and go, you liar.
With thumbs up. Yeah.
Like, why, how did I, it's just great stuff.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Perfect timing also for our conspiracy focused culture right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Phil, what you just reminded me of is the infamous War of the Worlds radio play that was broadcast back in the 1930s.
Orson Welles reading on the radio. Sure. Yeah.
And everyone, for those who aren't familiar with it, it was an audio. He was reading the first person perspective of the War of the Worlds as if it was happening around him.
Yeah, it was a screenplay based on War of the Worlds, right?
Yeah, right. And so people listening believed that Earth was actually under attack by aliens, and he was a real journalist covering what he was seeing and letting people know.
Yeah. And I don't think that it was his intent to defraud the public.
No, I don't think it
was.
At all.
I think he was a consummate and genius entertainer.
Yeah.
And just wanted to deliver an experience.
Which I think this is what this is as well.
Boy, did he succeeded.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy, because that's exactly, I think, the intent of the creator in this case. He's doing a performance in which he's consciously creating something that not only appeals to the paranoid conspiracy type person, but the general audience, because you begin to share this concept of mystery. What's this mystery? Who are these people? Why is this put together in the way it is? And what's so creepy about it? What's the motive? But your own imagination gets involved in a way that normally doesn't happen with the other films that we've shown in the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Great. Phil, just a fantastic pick. You get the award right out of the gate for the best film of the month. God damn it. So if you have any thoughts about this, are we wrong? Is it true or not, or a hoax? Contact us at talk@completelymachinima.com. Don't forget our news is on the blog as well. We're putting technology related, machinima related news there. Tracy's been handling that, but the rest of us have been contributing. So thank you all for your thoughts and your interest. Be sure you watch this great mockumentary film or documentary film, depending on your opinion. And we'll be back next week with our last film of the month. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.